Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Sana, and indeed a privilege and a pleasure to be on this call in this session, and truly wonderful to be meeting all of you. Many of you representing organizations who we've had the privilege of working with or continue to work with, and many of you who we would really hope to work with going forward. Thanks a lot to Sana for this wonderful introduction, and couldn't have started better by highlighting the importance of context. While content is definitely important, but the gap that Vani has been trying to address is to create platforms that provide contextual content to communities, right? Especially underserved communities. So a great start indeed, Sana. Thanks a lot for that. And as Sana rightly pointed out, I'm also joined by my colleague Shaini Chatterjee, who's been an integral part of Vani's journey for over a decade. And she'll be joining me in taking you through this session, and also trying to address any queries, questions. As structured, we also have a break, after the initial introduction, and we'll hopefully try and address some of your queries and questions as well. So without further ado, let me just take the liberty of starting and sharing a presentation that we will walk you through. Thank you so much once again. Is the screen visible?
Yes.
Wonderful. Thank you so much once again. So, as I said, if information is indeed power, then we do acknowledge, all of us do acknowledge, that a very, very large segment of the population is deprived of access to this credible and contextual information that can help people take informed decisions. Right. So Vani is into this work of creating tech innovations, powering community-led development for the next billion. We believe in appropriate technology. We believe in ethical means and design processes, community-centered and participatory methods of developing and embedding technology. And most importantly, in terms of being agile and being able to meet the evolving and changing needs of the communities in terms of communication platforms and the way we design and implement these programs. So Vani is a social tech enterprise creating innovative bottom-up participatory tech platforms that help underserved communities in low resource and remote settings. We all know that, as I said, if information is indeed power, a very large segment of the population is in fact deprived of access to this information. What we also believe is that a lot of these are not just about access to information or just about affordability to devices or means or media, but it is also about a lot of the social and cultural and economic reasons, many of them seeded due to a lot of neoliberal or even patriarchal reasons or social reasons, because of which people do not get access to correct, contextual and credible information that can help them take some important decisions in their lives. Now, a lot of this access to information also leads to inequalities in terms of access to opportunities for jobs, livelihood, or even in terms of access to relevant health related information, or even in terms of addressing some of the very deep-rooted social and cultural inequalities that sort of create more disparity within the communities. So while many of these inequalities that we are concerned about, be it income, be it gender, be it caste-related inequalities or access to social benefits and entitlements, or the very fact that many of these community members do, or many of these communities, most of these communities do not get even an opportunity to participate in the broader narrative, right? So we believe a lot of these inequalities can be addressed by policies, but these policies have to be better understood by the communities, right? And in terms of what are the reasons for these inequalities, what are the background causes that have led to these inequalities, people need to have a better understanding of the background and also a better understanding of these policies that can really address these issues. But if people have to be better informed about these policies or these reasons, they need to be able to get this information in more contextual, more easy to understand, more relatable, means, right? So, and this requires platforms. This requires communication platforms. It is also not just about access to information, but also about their ability to debate, deliberate, and talk and share their views and opinions. And what we are trying to do at Ramani is actually trying to counter this current narrative, counter the current approach that a lot of social tech platforms are taking, which are leading to a lot of echo chamber, many echo chambers, sort of a singular narrative, a very forced narrative in some sense, and people aren't getting the more complete perspective, right? So, and a more contextual perspective of topics, and which is why community-led platforms or communication platforms which are more inclusive, which are more participatory, are extremely important, and which is what Vani is trying to address. So the three critical problems, which, as I stated, are one, the challenges that we're trying to address is low awareness, the limited contextual content, and most importantly, the current channels are largely non-inclusive. So Gramvani's flagship solution, which is Mobile Vani, is a federated network of community media platforms or participatory media platforms, where people whose voices are often unheard, who do not get an opportunity to share their opinions, views, do not get to hear from others within the community and build their perspectives, is currently absent, right? So what Mobile Vani is doing is to provide that network of platforms, community seeded or community embedded platforms, which allow for these conversations. So Mobile Vani is almost akin to a social media platform, akin to almost like a Twitter, but a voice-based Twitter. We use voice as a medium since it's the lowest common denominator. It allows people to easily express themselves. It does not sort of create those barriers that other channels can normally provide, can create. Right? So such inclusive bottom-up platforms enable low-income communities in media dark regions to bring about positive changes in their lives. Now, how do we do it? Now, as I said, Mobile Vani is a network of community-based platforms, community-based participatory media platforms, and which is accessible through simple feature phones. People who do not have access to smartphones, do not have access to internet, may not be comfortable with using smartphones or even text or any other channel of engagement. They are able to still access the platform, and that's why it's an extremely inclusive platform. So the three pillars on which the Mobile Vani network of platforms operates is accessible technology. And this is where I kind of highlighted the importance of appropriate technology, wherein we use voice as a medium. Despite all the innovative and new technology stacks that we sort of deploy at the back end, from an end user's perspective, the user experience is extremely easy, extremely relatable, extremely convenient in many ways, right? So, and that is what sort of builds a level of trust within the users that engage with our platforms. So people with low-income communities, poorly literate, users without internet access can also use the platform, and that's how we ensure that appropriate tech is given a lot of importance in our journey. We started off with community radio stations when people did not have devices, and that was the most decentralized approach of providing contextual content to the communities. As the device or the mobile penetration started growing, we knew that it was largely feature phones, and that is how Mobile Vani transitioned into a mobile-based platform and accessible even through simple feature phones without the need for internet or smartphones. We now have, as people and youth especially, and the younger generation now slowly moving to smartphones and access to the internet or database channels, we have now the Mobile Vani Smart app, where people are able to access the same audio content, but through a very interesting and intuitive and exciting interface, which is the Mobile Vani Smart app. And we have now built more exciting technologies, which of course I will speak about in the subsequent slides, but this is just to highlight the importance of sort of moving with and being agile and ensuring that we evolve based on the community's needs and the channels that are more inclusive and participatory. The second element of the three pillars is contextual content, which Sana rightly started this whole conversation with. The importance of contextual content is something that we give a lot of weightage for, and that's what we believe leads to very efficient ways or very tried and tested ways of that Vani has learned over the years in terms of achieving more inclusive or more effective behavior change programs that we have run across various thematic areas, be it health, be it education, be it governance, we read or agriculture, livelihood, youth-based topics, sexuality, reproductive health, etc. This is what helps us engage with our target users better and makes them build that sort of a trust that is required to run these decentralized platforms. Now, third and very important element again is community participation. We've always believed that it is not just enough to create new and exciting tech or and user-centric tech, but the more important element is how do you embed the technology within the community's context, and which is where we strongly work towards community ownership of these platforms, right? And the way we do it is by identifying volunteers who represent the platforms, who have a desire to give back to the communities, who want to build a social capital, right? We identify these community volunteers and we create a sort of a club structure, right? So, and each of these volunteers identified from diverse backgrounds are trained to do three critical things, right? So one, in terms of popularizing the platform, ensuring that slight bit of nudges and pushes that are required to ensure that communities are able to appreciate and understand the value of the platform. And that's how they do community meetings, community workshops, focus group discussions. They interview local communities, interview local authorities, and share all these perspectives with the community on this platform. The second is they engage with the local authorities. Which is an extremely important element in terms of representing the communities and driving accountability. Now, the voices that get recorded on the platform, be it grievances, be it concerns, issues, are all very strong evidence that is used for public policy level advocacy, be it at an individual level impact, or even at a community level impact, or even at an institutional level change that's required. So all these voices that get captured on the platform are all driven by these volunteers who engage with the communities, popularize the platform, share hyperlocal news and information on topics that are relevant to the communities, and third and most importantly, interface with the local authorities and drive the accountability that the data-driven accountability that this platform envisages to achieve at the decentralized level. So the Vani's platforms have, leveraging these three pillars, Vani's platforms have engaged with users across the spectrum, be it farmers, women self-help groups, informal sector workers, industrial workers, youth, adolescents, boys and girls across more than 20 plus states in the country. I will of course speak about a few stats that sort of highlight this engagement, but it's been leveraged by organizations, community-based organizations, local NGOs, government bodies, and communities across the spectrum. So the theory of change, as I said, is based on the fact that, as I mentioned to you earlier, policies will work, but policies will work only when people start demanding for these policies. Now, people will demand for these policies only when they are better informed about them. They will be better informed about it only when the content or the information is provided in a contextual and easy to understand manner. And when it is provided, and when the platform provides them with an ability to converse, understand, get a complete perspective, hearing views and perspectives from different segments of the community, hearing their peers, hearing their family members, hearing their friends, hearing diverse opinions, that is what will build a stronger understanding. Community embedding thus helps, and with appropriate technology, helps us sort of contextualize not just the content, but also in terms of how the technology is adopted by the communities. And when these conversations happen, it then leads to better collectivization, better community level efforts. It then leads to action on the ground, informed action on the ground. And when these users, some of them who have taken this positive action, come back on the platform, share their experiences, share their positive stories on the platform, it then leads to broader collective action, right? So, and that's what sort of drives the change, the system level change that Vani has been envisaging and has been working to achieve. And this we have seen across hundreds of stories, or hundreds and impact stories and thousands of impact stories, both at an and at an institutional level as well. So this is a broad theory of change that we sort of operate on, and most of our programs are designed. From a user experience standpoint, let me quickly take you through the user journey. The user calls the, at a district level. So we've got two specific approaches. One is, of course, project-based. Two is the mobile Vani clubs, which are district level instances. People, there is a 10-digit mobile number that is mapped to each district. People give a missed call to the number. Jamui Mobile Vani, for example, a district or a club in Bihar has a 10-digit number. People give a missed call to that number. They get a call back from the platform and they listen to the content that is programmed almost like a radio, but it's an interactive radio platform. So people listen to hyperlocal news. They don't want to listen to something. They can press 1. They can skip the content. They can go on to the next channel, which might be on agriculture. And each day of the week, we program content. And this is, of course, customized based on the community's needs or the club level needs. And this includes a lot of studio generated content. This includes a lot of user generated content, reporter generated content. And it's almost like just you can visualize a voice based social media platform. We'll be happy to share a few instance numbers with all of you if you'd like to experience it as well. So as I said, navigate the playlist, participate, record, and people can even share content with their friends. For example, they listen to a great content or a job information. I'd like to share it with my friend. All I need to do is just press 5. It's akin to a social media like and share, and you can type in the number of your friend, and the system will call out your friend to tell that your friend Vijay has actually shared this piece of information. So the content moderation, a lot of user-generated content that gets recorded on the platform is moderated. And this is what is sort of differentiating us from the conventional social media platforms. This is to ensure that there's no hate speech, there's more relevant content, it's contextualized, it's mapped, it's sort of tagged, classified, giving us a lot of insights into what people are talking, who is speaking about what topic, right? And what are their concerns, or are there questions, are there opinions, etc. on which topic. And so this content moderation is an extremely important piece. Partially it is done through a manual effort through a team of moderation team members who sit in Ranchi, and also our partner team members who are trained in terms of operating some of these moderation practices. Some of it is, although semi-automated in some sense, right? A lot of gender classification, location, and all those things can be sort of automated. And these conversations that happen on the platform and, provide us with a lot of insights in terms of what people are saying, what people are talking. And we run various campaigns to understand, users' perspectives on these varied, community level focused theme areas. And these insights are, of course, shared back with the partners who we work with and co-create content on. And that's where the same IVR platform is now available also on the Mobile Vani Smart app. While the current app that you will find on Android is an older version, which is of course currently running, a new version is soon to be launched probably in the next month or so. And it's going to provide a much more exciting, much more interesting interface with a lot more features enabled. So from a tech stack perspective, as I spoke about the interactive voice response, it's got great features in terms of off-the-shelf applications like people can listen to content, share content, people can collect data through our voice survey channel or application through which we can run surveys to do community research, to do market research, to understand users' perspectives, views, opinions on various topics. We used a lot of it during the pandemic, based on which we published a lot of reports based on the ground realities that we were able to, the ground truth in many ways that we were able to capture based on these survey results. We can run a helpline service wherein users who want to connect with experts, want to connect with partner field resources in terms of getting more information can be enabled. Query management system or a case management system wherein users who record grievances or ask queries can be mapped to partner resources or field resources or even our own volunteer resources, so that their grievances can be addressed, and all this can be sort of evaluated and sort of monitored in terms of the completion ratios. And many other such intelligence features. It's not just an inbound based platform, it's also an outbound platform wherein we can run a lot of campaigns reaching out to the communities through our platform. So as I spoke already about the Smart app, which the current version already operating, we have a new version that will be live in about a month or so. We've got a lot of interesting other features like the new voice tech innovations that we're working on, wherein leverages artificial intelligence and machine learning and NLP, natural language processing, we've collected a lot of content, or rather, if I may say, question and answers around important topics through some of our campaigns like Kahi and Kahi Baatein, focused on youth, on sexuality and reproductive health. Over 5,000 plus questions that have been collected over the years, over the past 6 years now, that we've been working on this campaign in collaboration with Kriya. Now we have responses for these questions, right? So and what we're now trying to do is we're trying to automate this process of content discovery, right? People, all they have to do is just call the number, they have to ask a question, the system will convert it to text. It will be able to check with the database of Q&A whether that question already has a response from the database, and will be able to play out the response in pretty much near real time. Right. So now we're talking about this topic that we are already, or a thematic area on sexuality and reproductive health, which we have already developing the solution for. We have also been working on maternal health. We're already working on something called PAJ, Pucho or Jano, which is focused on labor rights, right? So that's something that is already in progress as well. So we can create a similar such solution for various thematic areas. Similarly, conversational messaging, it's almost like a voice bot, right? So surveys conventionally would follow a very rigid structure, but with the conversational messaging sort of feature, what we can actually do is, based on the user's response, the subsequent set of questions can be sort of mapped. And that way it's much more in terms of focused to the user's inputs, and focused more in terms of so we can have a multi-tree structure, right, and not just a rigid structure of the surveys. Conversational messaging, again, Shaini can talk about it in terms of how we are looking at how we are leveraging it for more behavior change campaigns, right? So we're using a lot of these innovations. The other interesting innovation is how we are digitizing data from paper-based forms, right? So we work with Jivika. We've created this tool for one of our immunization programs called Tika Vani in Uttar Pradesh, in collaboration with University of Montreal, where frontline health workers have a simple app called Tika Vani, and the MCP card, the mother and child data card, immunization data card. All they have to do is just click a picture of the MCP, the immunization data, and it automatically digitizes the data and is available for immediate evaluation of the progress of the immunization schedules, provide an immediate access to the frontline health workers to schedule their visits, to follow up with the women and the pregnant women, especially in terms of the next schedules, and also the plan of action going forward. And a lot of the automated outbound calls that can go out to the women, just sending them reminders. So a lot of these innovations power the whole mobile Vani stack, right? So now the network of community media platforms is done through three specific approaches. One is a geo-based network of platforms. This is what I spoke about, mobile Vani clubs. We operate about 25 such instances in Bihar, Jharkhand, MP, UP, etc. And these mobile Vani clubs are operated and run by Gram Vani, and a lot of that content is created by us and also in collaboration with partners and run for these communities. The community volunteers are trained and also are associated with Gram Vani's platforms. Thematic platforms are sponsored or partner supported platforms where we create specific community focus, right? So which is, for example, a platform focused on labor rights, right? So it's called Saja Manch. It was started initially in Delhi NCR region. It expanded to other regions in Tamil Nadu as well, right? So it's very specific to a certain theme. A platform called Persons with Disability, platform called Namavani, right, in Karnataka, in collaboration with Enable India, focuses on persons with disabilities. The Hamari Vani platform is operating across the Hindi-speaking regions, again focusing on persons with disabilities. Now, these are thematic platforms. And similarly, sponsored platforms are platforms which are, again, partner supported, again, in a very specific geography or in a very specific region. That, right? For example, we're working with Jivika in collaboration with PCI and also funded by the Gates Foundation. And this Jivika Mobile Vani platform focuses on enabling information access and also engagement with the self-help group women across, operating currently in about 20 blocks across 2 districts in Bihar, and is ready for growth, or rather expansion into the rest of the state of Bihar as well. So a quick snapshot of the network in terms of the user base, be it in terms of the profile. A large segment of the users are youth, right, in the 19 to 30 age profile. A majority of our users, of course, are male, largely because of access to personal devices or personal phones, which again is a constraint in terms of women. But some of our platforms are very focused on women and bringing women to use the platform, bridging this whole digital divide, right? So Shaini can in fact talk about it. We have a program called the Meri Awaaz Meri Pehchan, which again is very, very specific and focused towards women and bridging this whole digital divide. Again, we have farmers, we have students, right? So we have service sector workers, a lot of unorganized sector workers from the Delhi NCR, Tamil Nadu regions who operate in the textile garment factory belt, garment belts, engage with our platforms, which is mostly Saja Manch and the labor force, labor and workers' rights interventions. We've got 300 plus community volunteers who engage with us, who work with us, who are our eyes and ears and engage with the communities across these interventions or across these instances that we operate in. So as I mentioned, we work across these areas of work: health and health tech, governance, workforce and labor rights, women and child development, livelihoods and agriculture, education and youth engagement. A new area that we've been working on very specifically is around climate resilience and adaptation as well. So, and a lot of interest that's also coming up in that particular direction. So we've had our platforms that partners have taken to various countries. We've launched, in fact, our relatively new international platform in Ethiopia in 2019-20. It's been doing very well. It's called Minch, and it's a platform for persons with disabilities. We have callers coming in from more than 20 plus states in the country. We've got more than 15.5 million calls just in the last year. About 150 plus partners who've used our platform. About 100,000 unique users who engage with our platforms every month. This is primarily on the geo-based clubs, right, or the network platforms that we operate in. And more than 70% of the users have a disposable income of less than 2,000 per month. And we've been recognized across forums. So this kind of proves that we've been operating at scale and also achieving the impact at scale. So let me just stop here. I don't know if I've already shot 20-minute mark, sorry about that. But yeah, I'll just stop here and maybe take a few questions. And after that, I'll request Shaini to take over for the next session.
Thanks, Vijay. Thank you for giving us the big picture as well as kind of going into the how of the work that you do. We do have a couple of questions on the chat. I think the critical mass of users and the time and effort was answered, I suppose, from Prachur. But there was this question on how much time and effort is needed to create this audience.
No, absolutely. I mean, in terms of so there are two approaches, right? So one is Vani taking a lead, going into a new geography. The second is leveraging the presence of an existing ground level partner, right? Or a partner who's already operating in a certain region, which is of course the partnership led approach. For either of the cases, I mean, in terms of more from a broader perspective, technology is the easier piece, right? So we could launch a new instance pretty much in less than 48 hours, right? So that's the easiest part of the whole picture, or amongst the three pillars, if I may call it so. The more important aspect is one, content. We have to contextualize it based on the community's needs. Now, we might need, in certain cases, we might need to do a needs assessment. We might need to do a little more deeper research in terms of understanding the communities, in terms of what are the challenges, what is the language or dialect that they use, what are the sort of problems that they face. In some cases, we might be able to reuse a lot of the existing content that we've already created, right? So a lot of it can be definitely repurposed and used in the context of a new instance. But anything new based on the community's needs has to be understood and deployed. The third and most important element is how do you embed this new technology into the community? And that is where it takes a little bit of time. Now, either through identifying community volunteers by going into the communities, identifying or talking to local stakeholders like the panchayat, resource members, or even in terms of the local influencers, or even if there's a local community-based organization or an NGO operating in that region, we interact with them and identify relevant volunteers and try and sort of initiate the whole process. So while as I said, technology and content might take anywhere between 1 week to a month, depending on the content and other aspects, the community mobilization aspect might take anywhere from 1 to 3 months, right? So depending on what sort of effort is required and how much of effort and nudging and pushing is required. But it's never a one-time thing, right? That's why the role of the community volunteer is extremely important. And they are the ones who sort of constantly nudging and pushing and educating the users about the importance of the platform, what new content is coming, what are the new conversations that are happening on the platform, right? So which is what is very, very critical, right? So, and it's not about just sending an SMS, putting up a poster. It does not work that way. And that's why this capacity building, that slow, patient, persistent approach is required. And that's what sort of we strongly believe in, that it's not just about technology. Technology is the easiest part. The more important part is how do you build in that empathy in implementing technology-based solutions, right? And you have to contextualize and understand the challenges of the communities before you can dump anything on them.
Thanks, Vijay. Mariam, would you like to ask the question instead of, or?
Sure, I can. Should I turn? I'll just.
No, we can hear you. Yeah.
Hi, everybody. Yeah, it's really, I feel that you've sort of touched up a little bit upon some of the difficulties and challenges in rolling out the program to the communities you work with. But I was just wondering if there's anything else you wanted to touch upon, because I think the hardest thing often, and perhaps the thing that we don't talk about, are the challenges that we face in rolling out our programs. So I'd love to know if there's anything else that comes to mind when you're actually rolling out the tech to communities. What sort of challenges and difficulties you face? Thank you.
No, thank you, Mariam. And in fact, let me probably request Shaini to come in. I think there would be nobody better than Shaini, I guess, to speak about this. Having implemented hundreds of programs across our partnerships and also communities we've been working on. Some of the challenges before Shaini takes over, it's quite diverse, right? So every community instance we start does not operate in the same way, right? Every community instance throws up new set of challenges, new set of surprises for us. In many ways, many of them throw up new use cases which we never envisaged, right? So we never thought about. Just to give you an example, the platform for persons with disability, which is called Vaani or Hamari Vani, right? So we started off with Enable India thinking that we might be able to sustain for about 3 to 6 months, right? So we said, we're not sure if people will be, we might have to create a lot of content. We might not have enough engagement, right? So the Enable India team started creating, tons of content just to say that, okay, let's keep triggering those moments that where people will want to engage with the content. And lo and behold, and it's been like 7 years now since that we've been operating, right? And I don't think there's been any point of time where the user-generated content proportion of the total content has gone below 90% till date, right? 90% of the content is user generated, and all the use cases, be it organizations wanting to publish job opportunities for persons with disabilities, volunteering opportunities for persons with disabilities, people sharing their experiences on how they overcome certain challenges, etc. These are all things that we never thought that people will discuss on this platform, right? But the challenge, again, platform similarly, focusing on a different user segment does not operate the same way. And we would expect there'll be a lot of user generated content. It does not happen, right? So it's kind of very, very different from each community, each, district or geography that we engage with. So sorry about that. Shaini, anything that you'd like to add? In fact, I'd request Shaini as part of the next few slides where we talk specifically about certain examples, right? So I'm sure, she'll be able to touch upon some of these challenges more contextually again. I don't know if that.
Yeah, thanks, Vijay.
Sorry, Shaini, before you come in, Vijay, there are some questions on the chat.
Sure,
in the meantime, if you could respond over there so that we allow for Shaini and then Nyaya and Dasra to come in. So yeah, over to you, Shaini.
I'll just start with answering the single question before coming to the slide. about the challenges of rolling out the technology. Yeah, so since I work with women, so the challenges are even greater because in the rural women often are not aware of how to even, save numbers or dial numbers. So, so that's a different kind of challenge that we face. So we start from absolute scratch at certain points, and we slowly introduce the stuff. So since Vijay has already explained that there is so much that that the platform offers as functions, but then we just tell them, okay, for now you can just listen to it, right? And when they start listening to their peers' voices, they also get interested. Okay, how can I record? So please tell me that. So that's the next logical step. And then there are advanced functions like liking a content or bookmarking a content, sharing it with your other peers. So those are advanced functions that we generally take one step at a time in terms of rolling out the technology without just offering them the entire gamut of things that you can do this. So yeah, so that's something that I just wanted to highlight in terms of rolling out the technology. Then another thing is that the really marginalized community women, right? Who are probably migrant, seasonal migrant, who do not have time or do not even have access to mobile phones. They generally over there we generally form a listener group. So where what the women who have a phone can actually come and make the other women listen to the content and gather their inputs and share as user recordings. So this is another strategy, and all of them, as Vijay also have highlighted, are not certain strategies that we go with. So the use cases are, kind of evolved with more and more interaction with the community members, and then they are standardized for similar use case. Yeah. So to answer that question, so do you suggest that we take some of the questions in the chat before I move on to the this section of highlighting?
No, I think we'll run out of time. So I'd request Vijay to kind of answer those questions on chat and then kind of, if time permits, take that. I think some of these case studies would be really helpful and might answer the question in the book.
Yeah, I'm actually answering some of the questions on the chat. So go ahead, Shaini. And some of the subsequent slides might also help.
Right. So some of the slides are basically, so these slides basically highlight some of the use cases and the impacts that we have received from our user standpoint, right? So, so the first one is about, providing information to farmers about the different schemes and entitlements that they can access. And through which, so basically it's an inflow of information, raising their awareness on the available schemes, what are the requirements, from where they can apply to that, and what are the due diligence processes, and etc., so that they can then avail them. Can we go to the next slide, Vijay? This is pretty much linked to the previous slide of inflow of information and informing our participant, where there are gaps in service deliveries. So it's kind of first knowing what we are supposed to receive and then raising it, right? So it's again a part of collectivizing their voices and amplifying. So there was a very unique case that I came across when I was in one of the very remote blocks of Jamui district in Bihar, called Chakai, where the hospital workers, the government hospital workers, were demanding money from the ashas when they used to bring children, to deliver. So, and the ashas, although know that that is not the right thing, didn't have a platform to raise the voice, because to whom they would have raised it. Now, when they raise the voice on this platform, remember this platform is listened to by not only their own circle, but by the larger circle, the larger community, and even the critical stakeholders. So in terms of the delivery of the services to the last mile, this kind of approach helps to basically get impact stories and success stories out of the community where they avail these services or raise the gaps that there are in the service delivery system. We can go to the next slide. This is again this is for the Saja Manch platform, where basically we worked with the laborers on labor rights, where we inform them about what are their rights and what should they demand. And then with that informed understanding and information, they kind of raise their voice And we connected with those voices, we connected to the other stakeholders to resolve those cases, thereby benefiting the users who are mostly the laborers on this platform. The next slide is something that I'm going to speak about a bit lot. We can go to the next slide, Vijay. And I also saw a couple of questions in the Excel that you shared about changing the deep-rooted norms, the patriarchal system. And again, since I work with the women, this is something very unique. And considering also that in some of the parts where we work, a woman accessing a mobile phone and using it for her own purpose is even tabooed. So their access to mobile phone is very restricted to just receive calls from their families and relatives. So it is very important to listen to the user. So I remember that we did a campaign on early marriage, and one of the primary concerns that they have is that if we do not marry off our daughters, they are going to run away. Now, I or we cannot, kind of brush it under the carpet and say, okay, oh, nothing like that happens. Because that then they are definitely not going to get connected to the platform and the conversation. The solution lies in listening to what their peers are sharing or how their peers are telling them that, okay, that's not always the case. Uh, doesn't married woman run away? For example, I'm just giving you some of the arguments that has evolved out of the community itself. And taking those insights, taking those conversations into consideration, we create the content. So the content is not a linear content where we are just giving them gyan that, okay, this is the law. And if you marry early, then your girl is going to get pregnant early. And then there'll be next child. And then there'll be health applications. She will not be financially independent, etc., etc. Is a very linear process that comes from our end, from the secondary research and sources. On the other hand, if we listen to the community, then there will be way more nuanced realities that we will be able to incorporate in the, say, in the entire drama series that will ultimately lead them towards, at least as the first step to consider, as a second step to speak out about it. Even if there are negative thoughts in their mind, providing them that safe space, providing them that confidence that I am not supposed to speak what they want me to speak, but to accelerate a debate and a discourse between themselves where we are just facilitators over there. We don't come in with solutions essentially unless and until it's a question that how can I avail Vidya pension, for example, right? So that is a very interesting strategy that has worked for us in terms of, and of course, involving everyone. Another use case I'll just highlight is that when we are working with Jivika, we figured out that the members, the SHG members are mostly elderly women, and newly married women are nowhere in the scene unless and until their sasuma or their mother-in-law has already been a part of some other SHG. Then only the new women will come into the scene. When we developed the Meri Awaaz Meri Pehchan platform in the same region, we tried and bring these newly married or younger women into our platform who are not in the SHG, but we didn't tell the SHG members that you can't participate over here. That strategy is definitely not going to work. It has to be very inclusive. It has to be very safe for them to express their own mind. And that is how these, and even men, if they want to come, if they want to participate. So when COVID happened, these women raised the concerns and actually helped their family, the men who are coming back, who are migrants, to access, to come back, to communicate the challenges they face. So these women use this platform for that purpose. And that actually helped a lot in terms of restoring the faith of the male on the platform that, okay, let them use this platform. So it's not a hard and fast way of going, heads on. It has a lot of back steps, reflection, taking the feedback of the community. We essentially conduct a needs assessment study before we generally start any program in the community to understand their major information gap, their prevalent perceptions, where tweaks in attitude might help, what nudges might help, what nudges might come in later. So these are very important things to keep in mind. And lastly, we introduced this format of conversational message delivery that we just spoke about, where we take a pause in a series, in a drama or in an audio, and then we ask them that, what do you think? So if you think that she should get married, the kahani will go in one line. If you think that she shouldn't get married, the kahani is going to go on another. So the onus of the change is in your hand. So that feel is very important for the community to get engaged into the entire scenario. And so this impact story, the the backstory of this was that. So yeah, I'll stop here, and maybe we can answer a couple of more questions and go ahead, Vijay. What do you suggest?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just as continuing with what Shaini said, we've done hundreds of campaigns across various topics, right? So we ensure that conversations are complete. It gives a wider and broader perspective, right? It is contextual, and most importantly, it is credible, right? A lot of that credibility is also brought in by communities participating, community volunteers verifying and validating content. Anything that is of concern is flagged immediately by the volunteers. So there is truly a community participation in terms of running and managing the whole platform, right? So yeah, we've run many campaigns across these various, some of these representative topics are mentioned here, but yeah.
I thought if we could hold on to this slide,
Sure.
and if folks on the call want to kind of go into understanding any particular area, the campaign that they worked on, or have any questions, we have a good 10 minutes now to have that conversation. Feel free to unmute yourself and ask your questions. Marisha, you had a couple of questions, not sure if that was answered. Would you like to?
Thanks, Sahana. Thanks, Vijay. Yeah, but my questions are not related to the content.
That's fine. I think we can use the same.
Okay. Yeah. So I wanted to understand that when Vani goes into a new geography or a new district, what is the experience on the adoption curve? What are the timelines, and what is the kind of content that you all find that works? And also, I think you all said that you are present in 4 states. So is there any plan to sort of maybe move to newer areas?
Yeah, Shaini, would you like to answer the first part, which is focusing more on the content and what kind of conversations or what's the sort of adoption curve?
Yeah. So generally, again, our first lookout will be to figure out, who can be the ears and eyes of the community in terms of being the local community champions, because those are the people that the community trusts, and those are the people that knows the community very well. So beyond that, what kind of content is absolutely dependent on that community. For example, if we have generally seen that if we are to involve women, women who are married, it is their children's well-being that actually attracts them. So we start from the lowest hanging fruit if there is a scope for doing that, or maybe involving them into submitting their own entertainment oriented item like local language songs, dohas, couplets, etc., before going into a serious discussion of other socio cultural or economic issues in that. That's for one part of our target group. At the same time, if it is about youth, then there's a lot of demand generally for career counseling, insights on what kind of courses will help. So that completely depends on the kind of people we have planned to intervene with. For men, it is generally news, hyperlocal news. It is also generally about expressing themselves or bringing in their own voice in terms of supplying the news, the hyperlocal news to others. So yeah, it's a mix and match of these kind of strategies that we need to figure out when we intervene in a completely fresh geography.
Yeah, and absolutely As Shani said, in each new intervention that we launch, in each new geography that we go into, we do a bit of initial needs assessment to understand the sort of contextual challenges or problems that the communities face. We talk to local stakeholders and sort of get a gap, sort of a grasp of what are the key aspects that we should be focusing on. And based on our experience in terms of what content that we've created for other clubs or instances, we sort of repurpose some of that content, or in many cases, we create new content as well. Partnerships play a very critical role in co-creating content for these communities, right? So they bring in the thematic expertise. We understand how to contextualize it, how to package it better. We bring in a lot of entertainment as a format, right? Entertaining formats in terms of conversations that, for topics which are conventionally a little heavy, right? So we try and package it in a way that's easier for users to understand, relate. It's not just top-down, monotonous, monologue, right? So we try and ease up the conversation by making it, a discussion between two people, a mother-in-law, daughter-in-law, talking about, certain aspects which we're trying to focus on, right? So we try and lighten the conversation, but keeping the core message intact, right? And putting it up in a strong way, and which also sort of triggers conversations in some sense. And that's the real call to action that we hope to achieve with every campaign that we run. And the best part is that it is dynamic. We know each day what's working, what's not working, and we are able to change and sort of modify that content or campaign to try and bring in, try and drive the sort of engagement we want to achieve. To answer your second question, Marisha, in terms of the expansion plan, I in fact wanted to refer it as part of the next, the way forward. We definitely are looking at expanding the network of mobile Vani platforms. So we are definitely open to partnerships, and we have been doing it over the years, and we would like to continue that as well.
I have a couple of questions on your campaigns around PSA and in early marriage and alcohol ban.
I'm answering some of them in the chat itself, so Vijay can go ahead.
So shall I go to the next slides?
I am answering, yeah, I'm answering those which I can.
Yeah, we'll of course touch upon these questions. Shall I go ahead, Sana?
Sure.
Yeah, no, coming to this important question of, we're building this network of platforms. Now, when we talk about this network of platforms, just to visualize, right, these are independent, decentralized instances, right? While from a conventional media perspective, most of it is top-down, either information broadcast or dissemination, right? Or any of these similar mediums. We are trying to take an alternate approach. We're trying to decentralize this whole process, wherein we're creating these independent community level, hyperlocal, bottom-up sort of instances, which are very specific to these communities or the thematic instances, or specific to certain user segments, so that content conversations can be more contextualized, right? So that approach definitely helps us keep the value of the instances in terms of the kind of conversations and content, but independently, any of these instances will find it difficult to sustain, right? Which is where, from a business perspective, or more from a commercial sustainability standpoint, we federate this network of platforms, and the engagement that we are able to drive with these various user segments across these various platforms, we are then able to offer it to partners to run campaigns, right? Campaigns on awareness, campaigns on behavior change, campaigns on community research, right? Even social enterprises or governments, for that matter, even do lead generation and advertising as well of some of the programs that they want to run for these target audiences, right? So individually, any of these platforms would find it difficult, as I said, to sustain themselves. But when we federate this network, when we create this network of platforms, we are then able to offer the sustainability, because we are obviously sharing the infra, sharing the services, sharing data and insights generated on the platform We don't have to recreate these instances, do not have to reinvest in these platforms for individual independent interventions, but can leverage this common network, which is how Vani looks at sort of building sustainability. Now, there are two approaches that we normally take, where we run these sponsored or project-based platforms where partners come in, they have a specific intervention, a very targeted objective, a very specific user segment in a particular geography. And we run that particular intervention for them, where we provide the technology, where we provide the content development and design services. We provide the community mobilization and training support for their field staff, right? And in many cases also help them with running the programs as well. So these are called managed services projects. Now the network sustainability comes in from where we are able to run campaigns for partners, right? Anybody who wants to run a campaign targeting any of the user segments in the geographies we operate in, you don't have to deploy a new instance. You can leverage our reach and we can run campaigns for you. There's a high level of trust that we generate and also benefit from the communities we work with, because it's owned and run pretty much by them, right? So, and we are able to help partners run these campaigns for these communities, right? So, and that's how we're able to generate these network level sustainability as well. We worked with partners across the spectrum, government organizations, development sector organizations, large national and corporates as well, who want to engage with these communities, right? Be it insurance or financial services organizations who want to engage with these communities, rural focused social enterprises and startups who want to interact with these communities, do outreach programs, behavior change and awareness programs, right? So many examples mentioned here. For want of time, I'm not going into specific examples, but let me just take a couple of them just for the benefit of understanding. Sana, are we okay on time, or do you want me to speed up?
No, don't speed up. But yeah, we are at 4 o'clock, so we need Anisha and Nandika to come in. But I think after this case study, we could do it. Okay, sure. So yeah, one of the project-based interventions, again, I mentioned to you about, is Jivika Mobile Vani. It was funded by the Gates Foundation in collaboration with Jivika, which is the government of Bihar, and it specifically focuses on leveraging the platform for outreach and engagement with the self-help group women, working through the community cadre of Jivika, and we train them, we enable them to use the platform for information dissemination on various topics. We started off with maternal health, maternal and child health and nutrition. And then we've of course now expanded to other topics like social development, financial inclusion, agriculture, etc. And this particular platform started off in about 5 blocks in Bihar and in one of the districts, and then expanded to about 20 blocks in 2 districts, Nalanda and Muzaffarpur, based on an impact evaluation study by POP Council that was done in 2019, and which showed some very clear benefits and increase in terms of the awareness, increase in terms of the impact overall the platform was able to achieve. And that's how Jivika actually adopted, and now we're looking at expanding this particular platform from just 20 blocks. Now in the immediate phase, we're expanding to close to 60 to 70 blocks across 4 districts and working towards the state level expansion as well. So similarly, again, a project with Dwara, focusing purely in terms of understanding the gaps relating to social protection and entitlements. What are the reasons for exclusion? How tech is in many ways leading to that exclusion. A lot of these learnings we have then been able to implement on the ground for community-led monitoring of access to social benefits and entitlements, community-led models for grievance addressal, and many of these campaigns we've actually implemented while working with BD workers in Bihar and in Tamil Nadu, working with a lot of the communities in terms of around the textile and garment factory belt. These are examples in terms of how organizations leverage the reach for generating, building sort of a rural community-focused brand awareness and also lead generation as well. Examples like Sato, which works on rural-focused sanitation products, right? And for example, an agri-focused, which is Holland Tractors, which did a lead generation campaign for tractors. This is something that I've already spoken about. They're in about 25 districts. We're looking at expanding to about 100 districts and more
in the coming year and two. We got a penetration of about 1.5% amongst the target audience, which is within each district. We're looking to expand that both through our own club-based approach and also through partnerships. We've got about 100,000 unique users every month, about 1 to 1.2 million users a year. We've done a lot of work during the pandemic when we touched close to 1 million people, 2.5 million minutes of usage, about 25,000 voice report, about 2,000 plus impact stories through the period of pandemic, and how we were able to contribute to not just access to information relating to COVID and health related precautions, but also relating to access to social benefits and entitlements as well. Yeah, so these are some of the pictures of our interventions. And where we are working towards, I mean, from a strategic perspective, first, as I mentioned to you, we are looking at expanding from 25 districts to 100 districts and beyond. We want to work with a lot of partners. We are open sourcing our platforms so that more and more partners can leverage it, can deploy their own community level instances. We will invite them to be part of the MV network. That way we will be together, be able to reach out to a much wider, base of communities that we can work together with and run these collaborative programs and campaigns. The other important element we are working on is Yuva Vani, youth-focused intervention, purely focusing on building youth as an important and extremely important intermediary in terms of engaging with the communities, right? Supporting them in terms of achieving their own career aspirations, more focused at alternate career opportunities, community-focused career opportunities, like can we build a cadre of Vikas Mitras, Swasthya Mitras, right? So Nyaya Mitras, all of them supporting the communities in terms of access to social benefits and entitlements, driving accountability, and also helping them stay closer to their homes and achieving their aspirations as well, and providing them with 20th century skills in terms of soft skills, right? So we want to work with a lot of partners in terms of building this particular intervention. And more importantly, in terms of moving from projects to a network level sustainability. So this is, of course, our roadmap in terms of the open sourcing that we are working towards. We will, of course, be sharing this information subsequently, enabling the broader community and also the ecosystem to benefit from our free voice stack that we will be providing to partners. And tech licensing will not apply. And the Vani, this is, of course, the intervention that I spoke to you about. Yeah, I think we are good. And yeah, I mean, this is, of course, just a summary of all the learnings that we've kind of gained over the years. Thank you so much, Anna. I think I don't know, crossed the time limit.
No,
but
there
I
are
think
a lot of questions, and I think there's a lot of interest as well to know deeper into each case studies. So we should share your contact if you're okay with that here, so that folks could reach out to your team to kind of understand, because we won't be able to do justice to some of those questions now. So I think it's a good time for us to bring in Anisha from Nyaya, who have worked on a campaign with Vani to talk about how she went about doing it, what was the problem, and the process and the approach and learnings from that. So thank you, Anisha. Over to you.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. So I'm glad that Shayoni is here, because I feel like she can take on some of the questions, the domestic violence related ones, because we did a campaign with them on violence against women. But thank you, Vijay. Thank you, Shayoni. So just to give you a brief introduction about Nyaya. Nyaya is an open access resource that creates simple, actionable, and authoritative legal information. And we do this in the form of explainers, step-by-step guides, frequently asked questions, and in audio and video format in English, Hindi, and Kannada. And for our vernacular language content, we decided we don't want to do just a direct translation from English, but exactly as Vijay said, create localized contextual legal information so that it's more engaging and people are able to understand it better and it reaches the audiences we want to. So to do this, we've been partnering with various grassroots organizations to, one, understand what their audiences need, two, for them to help us contextualize this legal information to be most useful for their audiences, and then three, to disseminate it. And Vani was the most ideal partner for us to pilot this with because they do exactly this and they have really understood their audiences where they work. So I think the first campaign we did with them was during the second wave of the pandemic. It was called Mere Bhi Awaaz Suno, where there were a lot of legal questions coming up in terms of rights and entitlements relating to the pandemic, but there was no information that was easily available in a format that was in regional languages. So what we did was we created this, jointly created this campaign called Mere Bhi Awaaz Suno, which answered a lot of these questions, talked about death certificates, the health benefits that are available and things like that. And Vani packaged this into 8 audio episodes, which they disseminated on their on mobile Vani. And the feedback was fantastic. So I think it reached about 14,000 people. But the heartening part for us was that we received 900 comments and 441 questions. And through our Access to Justice network, we were able to answer all of the legal questions that came in from them. And for us, until now, all of our content was disseminated through our website and social media. And apart from a stray comment or a feedback form that was filled from the website, we had very little information on how our content was received. Whereas when Vani came into the picture, we had like this really rich source of data in the form of user-generated content and feedback. There were all these audio episodes that talked about how the content was useful for them. And this helped us, one, show impact in a way we've never been able to do before. So that opened a lot of doors for us, which was great. 2, it also helped us improve our content based on the feedback. And 3, and I think this is a really important important thing that came out of this, was we were able to identify a lot of areas for collective action or strategic litigation. For example, an issue that was raised in multiple situations was people were saying a family member has passed away from COVID, but the hospital is not providing us with a COVID certificate. And now we're not entitled to any of the benefits that we could have received. And I mean, this case did go on to the Supreme Court and it was handled, but this gives you an opportunity to immediately take action and provide some sort of remedy that will help a lot of people. And our learning from this and from a lot of other organizations is the legal information is really useful and important, but people feel they need more. It's not just enough to have this information. They also needed someone to help them navigate the whole process, which is overwhelming. So we are working together with Vani and other organizations to see how we can create this network of district lawyers who can help create these Nyaya Mitras, these local champions, support them to navigate the system. And that's where we're trying to go ahead with this project. Another campaign that we did with Vani was Meri Zindagi Mera Adhikar, which was on violence against women, on family laws, which again showed us a very different part of the audience, because it showed us how women have access to technology, how they have very little ownership to the technology. So women listen to the content, and they've listened to it for many minutes together and repeatedly, but no one has asked questions, because how do you get back to them with the answers? Because they don't own that mobile phone. It's not in their possession. So it brought up a lot of these issues. And I think maybe Sayoni would like to talk a little more about this, because I've seen questions talking about domestic violence and women related issues and how to deal with those from that point of view. And this content was created through, again, audio episodes, but in a story format. So they had 2 women talking in conversation and explaining the law based on that. And Nyaya would provide the legal inputs, and Vani contextualized it and made it more engaging. That's all from me.
Thanks, Anisha. Any specific questions for Anisha on this campaign? Okay. You could use the chat for that. Can I now request Nandika from Dasra to come in?
Thank you, Sana. And thanks, Vani team, I think, for a great presentation. It's always good to have some of this playback time with you all rather than being in the weeds of project work. So thanks for that. To introduce myself, I represent the 10 to 19 Dasra Adolescents Collaborative, which is within the larger universe of Dasra as an organization. We are a collaborative of the key stakeholders around adolescents in the sector. So that is funders, government, NGOs, experts, as well as young people themselves. And we try to build a platform that brings these people, these actors together to problem solve collectively and look at innovative solutioning as a sector rather than in silos. So some of the work that we have done previously that with Vani has actually, I think we started it off in 2019 formally, so it's a while ago. So pre-COVID project that I'll be talking about, which was our youth-led campaign called Ab Meri Bari. And Ab Meri Bari, I'll post it in chat. You can read more about it. We've done it every year since then, but that was the first year. So a lot of experiments, a lot of figuring out of what works. So one of the key things that I think was super useful about working with Vani was the way in which the program, the technologies, the options were able to integrate into a campaign that already had a lot of partners working on it, as well as a lot of different kinds of interventions. So we had an offline intervention in the community level in 2 states, as well as an online intervention on social media where young people were posting stories, etc. And Vani was able to fill this gap, kind of bridge this gap through the intermediate technology that they brought into the campaign. So the problem that we were, of course, trying to solve was around young people and adolescents and their issues being a very low priority in the community, especially difficult topics such as sexual reproductive health, menstrual hygiene, etc., being a challenge for young people to be able to access information on, or even have any kind of conversation that is meaningful, either in their families, in the communities, or with the frontline workers who are meant to provide these services and information to them. So going in, what we knew that we want to do is find a way to get this information to young people in a manner that is confidential and where they can engage with it at their own pace, in their own privacy, with the anonymity that sometimes these kind of conversations require. The second thing we wanted to do is, as a part of a campaign, look at how do you start making the system more sensitive to taking input from young people. So we picked RKSK as our primary scheme that we would engage with, and we looked at how do we do advocacy to open up channels for RKSK to start listening to young people. And that's another place where Vani's input, etc., was also supportive in plugging that gap. And the third piece was how do you then get gatekeepers, community, people around, public media to create that enabling environment that will support this kind of interaction between the user, the beneficiary, the person who the service is meant for, and then the service provider, which is the decision maker, which is either the government or an NGO partner. So this kind of universe, what we were working within, this was the context that we were working within. And what we did do with Vani over a short period of time in that year was develop a set of episodes on a weekly basis that went out to a large number of young people that they listened to, engaged with, posted their questions on, and responses were sent. Each of the episodes was also designed in a way where, based on the feedback we got, we tweaked the content of the episode that was going up. It was very, very iterative and very dynamic in the way in which the content was even designed, which was critical to, I think, the success of the reach, etc., that we managed to have. The second thing I think that was really useful here is while we were sharing this content, we were also getting input on how effective this was. So a poll was done before and after, again through the IVRS mobile Vani platform, to figure out the change in perception, the change in awareness that was happening at a community level with young people and their gatekeepers. I think what was really critical for us here was the fact that the confidentiality and the space that a mobile phone based technology that is not very high tech, but is an intermediary tech where it is, it's accessible to young people even in a limited way, was very, very critical in reaching the hard to reach areas where we were trying to work. The two states we were in was Jharkhand and Rajasthan, and mostly rural populations is who we were engaging with in that year. And Vani was able to help us move beyond that kind of binary thinking, I think, that often comes on tech and no tech. Like, where should we go? Like, tech means you have to have 100% access and smartphones and all of that. And no tech means there needs to be like a huge amount of human resources and money put into the ground to be able to reach people. And I think Vani was able to help us and funders and all the others who were part of this campaign to move beyond that binary and start thinking about this way of tech not replacing people, but tech kind of working with people to make it easier to kind of get some of this conversation going at the ground level. That was super important. The last thing I think I should speak about is how the work that happened with young people, the input that they gave, the data that was collected, the evidence that was generated, what did we do with all of that? So I think Vijay had presented this right in the beginning about the theory of change being, I wrote it down, yeah, that citizen engagement can lead to systems change. And this was very much a similar kind of thought process that I think Vani helped us kind of reiterate in the program. So all of the information that we got, the recommendations, the priorities that were set by young people themselves through the IVRS platform were used to inform the advocacy, which we did with the state government. And we did see a few kind of early success metrics, of course, nothing changes in 1 year. But we did see that the health secretary in Jharkhand acknowledged the priorities that came in. And he instituted a new training for RKSK counselors based on the recommendation that he had got from young people through that. So I wouldn't say evidence-based advocacy, but at least informed advocacy is what the Vani intervention helped us do, and which was pretty significant for us. And lastly, a smaller anecdotal piece for us, which was new and interesting, was when we were working a lot with the government stakeholders and decision makers. What we felt was there is an asymmetry in the kind of people who they interact with, the kind of voices that they listen to while thinking through some of these policy decisions and investment decisions. By being able to bring up content, data, input, which is directly from young people, cutting out the intermediary that is an NGO or intermediary, anyone else like that, it helped us at least in getting decision makers to really see problems from the perspective of the user, and being able to also help in creating that kind of narrative wherein there is a demand directly generated from the beneficiary to the decision maker or service provider, and kind of help with that accountability as a mindset. Of course, action is yet to be seen, and there's a lot more work to be done. But even that first step, I think, was very critical, and we've learned a lot from that. And since then, we've always made it an effort to keep, bringing back that stakeholder lens, that beneficiary lens to the government, to funders, everybody who we work with their decision-making capacity. And I think the work with Vani was something that really did inform and help us understand how to do that and how to actually operationalize that in a meaningful and authentic way. But yeah, maybe I'll pause here if there are any specific questions. And of course, Vijay, Shiny, please do come in to support on some of the more critical data ones. So I don't know.
Thank you, Nandita. Thank you. And it's the point I think a lot of people might have had. How does this kind of inform policy and the engagement at that level? So thanks for touching upon that as well. Yeah, we have the last 10 minutes open for questions and or comments or any queries around how do you engage with Vani, any of that. We're open to taking that now. Or any specific questions regarding DASRA's initiative as well.
I just wanted to also, sorry.
Sorry, I was saying Arpita had raised her hand. I don't know if her question was answered. Feel free to unmute and ask. Yeah, go ahead, Vijay.
No, I just wanted to thank Nandika and Anisha. I mean, it's been fantastic working with Nyaya and now DASRA, and in fact, we're looking at strengthening our partnerships going forward, because we believe that this collaboration, these partnerships are what are extremely critical, right? So in terms of trying to work together to address some of these very, very specific, very, very contextual challenges that communities face. Each district, each block, each community has its own share of problems and own version of the same problems, right? So I think it's, and that's where these collaborations play a very critical role. It's been a privilege and to be working with both of them. And in fact, many organizations who are there, who've been part of this portfolio also, we've had the pleasure of interacting or working with. So, it'll be wonderful to, and we really look forward to talking to a lot of you.
Yeah. Any questions, queries, comments? I mean, there's a live chat window going on. So thanks for that. All right, so it looks like we have done a good job, I suppose. I have put down the contact of Vijay as well as of Vani that you could use to reach out to them. And we'll share the recording with you, and you could share that with your team members. Thank you so much, Vijay and Shayoni, for your time and for sharing your experiences and learnings from the field. Thanks to each of you for joining us today. We look forward to staying engaged. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much, Anna. Thanks a lot to the RNP team and to Anisha, to Nandika, and to everybody. And it's indeed been a pleasure talking to all of you, sharing our learnings and experience from Vani. And as I said, we really look forward to collaborating and working with all of you. So please feel free to reach out. And thank you so much once again. And thanks, Shaini. And any last points that you'd like to mention?
Yeah.
Thanks a lot. Thank you.
Yeah, she did put in the comment saying there are a lot of nuances that can only be shared in a one-on-one conversation. So feel free to reach out to the Vani team on this. Thanks, everyone. Have a good evening. Take care.
Thank you. Thank you so much.